Hello friends, my name is Kumar and welcome back to our channel Kumar Programming. So this is the third part of our Docker series, which is Docker architecture. So in this video, we will learn about Docker architecture and its component step by step with the practical demonstration. In our previous video, we have covered how to install Docker on your local machine on Windows 10 or 11 operating system. Docker mainly work on client server architecture. So if you see here, mainly we have three component of Docker: Docker client, Docker host, and Docker registry, that is also known as a Docker Hub. So here Docker client is our CLI command line interface from where we are passing the commands to the server Docker host, and Docker host performing the action accordingly and then getting back the response to the Docker client, right? So from the Docker client, we can perform the actions like Docker build, Docker pull, Docker run, and inside the Docker host or Docker server, Docker takes pull the images from registry, right? And once it have the images, then it try to execute that image in the form of the container. And here Docker registry is nothing, it's just a repository for all of our public images. For example, here inside our Docker Hub, we have Ubuntu and here we have Redis images. So once from client, we try to pull that image, it goes to the Docker server, Docker host, where Docker Daemon check if that particular image is available inside the Docker or not. If it's available, then it's execute that image and make it as a container, right? But if that image is not available, then it goes back to the Docker registry and pull that image inside the Docker. And once image is available over here, then after that it create the container. So this is how Docker architecture work. But now let me show you each and every component, client, server, and registry, so it will be more clear to you. So if you remember that in our previous video, we have installed our Docker desktop. So once we install our Docker desktop on our local machine, then Docker client and Docker host are getting installed together. So now first of all, let's see its first component, Docker client. So now let's open a command prompt. Now let me make it a little bit bigger over here and I'll run a command docker version. So docker version is a command which give you the current installed version of the Docker. So if you just enter, you can see here the client, okay, Docker client, and also you can see here error. This error may introduce that the Docker daemon is not running. We are not seeing the server information here because our Docker server is not running on local machine, right? So now let me start the Docker server. So here I'll start my Docker. Now here you can see my Docker desktop is running. So and it's our engine also getting started, and here also you can see my Docker engine is running, right? So I have started my server as well. So I'll put it like this. Now if I run the Docker version command, now here you will be able to see client and server both, right? So here you can see the client and here you can see the server. So both client and server are running on my local machine. And now here we have the third component as a Docker registry. So now let me open the Docker registry as well. So here inside at the right side here I'll just type a Docker Hub, and this is the hub.docker.com. That is the official website for Docker Hub. And here you can get the list of all the images, around more than 5 lakh public images available over here. So here you can see we have image for nginx, we have image for Ubuntu, we have image for Redis, we have image for Postgres. So once we pull those images inside our Docker server, then we are not required to install those software in our local machine, and we can run our application directly from our Docker without installing those software in our local machine, right? So we are going to see all those things later on. But now see, we have the three components here. This is my Docker client, this is my Docker server, and this is my Docker Hub, right? So first of all, let me try to find some images inside our Docker Hub. So inside our Docker client, I'll send a command as a docker search as nginx, okay? So nginx is nothing, it's a kind of web server that is being used for the reverse proxy and load balancer, all those kind of stuff. So I'm going to search image nginx. So if I just press enter over here, see here I can see the list of all the images, and this is the image name, and here we have the image descriptions. It is having around 19,604 star, and this is official image, okay? Now the similar information we can try to find out from our Docker desktop as well. So here I can find out nginx. So here you can see here we have two official image. this nginx and which is having around 10,000 plus stars, right? And here also we can pull and we can run this image in our Docker server, and the same information you can get it from our Docker Hub as well. So here if I found nginx, see here we have our nginx, and if you see just for the official image, so here we have two official image, nginx and unit, which is having around 10,000 plus k stars. So now the whole purpose is we have to pull this image inside our Docker server, right? So how we can do that? So here we found our image, right? Now we can pull this image. So we have the command docker pull nginx. Okay, I'm going to create a separate video for all the most useful commands for Docker in our upcoming videos. But for now here I'm just going to show you that how we can pull that image, how we can create the container from the images, and how this client interact with our server and how server interact with our Docker Hub. Okay, so if I just run the client pull nginx, it's going to check inside our Docker server if that image is available or not. So here image is not available as of now. So again this Docker server is going to send the request to the Docker Hub, and it try to find out the image from there and download it inside our Docker server. So this is all happening behind the scene, right? So if you see here, once I Docker pull nginx, it goes request to the Docker server. Here in Docker server this nginx image was not available, then it goes back to the Docker Hub and pull the image inside our Docker server, right? Now we have the image inside our Docker server, but if you see here inside the container, we don't have any container, right? So now how we can check what all the images we have? So we have here command docker images. I'm having some mistakes. So Docker images, right? So here you can see we have one image, right, which is size is having a 187 MB and it's being created 3 months ago, right? And this is the image ID. Now we need to run this image. Image is not going to work at all until unless we don't have a container for this image, right? So we have to make a container for this image inside our Docker. So here you see inside our container, we don't have any container for now. How we can create the container for an image here? So we have to execute the command docker run, and then and here we can give hyphen name, docker container name. So here we will give nginx underscore container, right? This is the container name, and then we have to give our port where we have to expose our Docker service. So here all we will give port 80, and then this port 80 also is going to be, so this port we are going to expose, and this is our Docker internal port. Okay, so we have to give a hyphen d, that is hyphen d is nothing, it's disconnected. So once our this command will be executed, then our Docker client will be free. Okay, it won't be in a connected mode, and then we have to give our image name. So we are having our image nginx, or we can give our image ID as well over here. So now if you press enter, it's going to create a container. Now here you can see our container got created. See here nginx container got created, which is as of now current status is running, and this is running on port 80, right? Now if you see this, see now my nginx server is running on port 80. Welcome to nginx. So now from the client, from the CLI, we can check how many containers are there inside our Docker server. Here we have to use the command as a docker ps. Ps is nothing, ps is process status. So as of now, if you see, we have only one container is running inside our Docker server. See, one container is running inside our Docker server, and which is ID is 150. You can match with the ID 150. So now our container is ready and which is currently running. Now what will happen if I try to run any image which is not available inside our Docker server? So now let's see if I run docker run, let's have a Redis image, right? So this Redis is not available over here, right? So what will happen, and we are trying to execute this Redis, right? So what will happen, it will see it's showing the message as unable to find this image. So it's going to image is not available over here, so it's going to find this image from our Docker Hub, and once image is ready, then it's executed inside our Docker engine, right? And if you see here, the name is given Jen Rubin, that is some random name over here, because here we have not specified the name while executing our docker run command. And you can also see here we would be having two images. So if an image is not available over here, it's going to pull the image from our Docker Hub and execute it as a container. Now if you see here, we have executed our Docker run and that was not in a disconnected mode. So now this our client is already attached with this container and we cannot execute any further commands from here, right? So always we have to try to execute any images with the disconnected mode. So now let me open another command prompt here. So once our container are running inside our Docker server, so here we can check how many containers are running by Docker PS, right? So see here, here it's showing only one process because only one container is running over here, right? So we can, but if you want to see the both of the container, then we have to use the command as a Docker PS -a, right? Hyphen a is nothing, it's just all. So it's going to show you the all the containers which is having the like status as exited or up. So this my nginx is up and this my redis is exited. And now if you want to run this container, so here we have to just docker start and we can give this container id over here, right? So it's going to start my container. So now if you see this container is being started, and here if you see docker ps, we can see both of the containers are running, right? And similarly you can see in our Docker desktop as well, see my both of the containers are running over here. But if you see this container is having a different name, so I want to remove this and I want to make it as a proper naming over here. So what I'll do here, docker, so let me make it a bigger. So what I'll do here, docker ps, this will give me the container list. So here I want to remove this docker redis. So what I first of all I have to stop this container, docker stop, and I'll give the container id. So now this is getting stopped. You can verify it. See my docker container is stopped here. Now we can remove this. So we have a command as a docker rm and then container id. So this is my container id removed. Now if you see here, my docker container is removed for our redis image, right? But still if you see here, we have this image nginx image is available. Now if I try to pull this image again, so docker pull nginx, so what will happen, it will check do we have this image inside our docker server. Yes we have. So it's not going to pull the image from our docker repository. See here, using the default tag latest, and it's giving the message over here, pulling from library nginx, image is up to date for nginx. It's taking the latest version and it's showing image is already up to date, so it's not going to pull from the Docker Hub. Now we can run this our redis. Now if you see here, redis container is not running. So now let's run the redis container here. So we have to use docker run, and then we have to be give the name, proper naming convention over here, name as a redis container, and then we have to run in the detach mode, and then we have to give the image id, okay, our image name. So here we can just put our redis, that's it. Press enter, and now it's, see here, now my redis container is running. Now if you see this Docker architecture, now you'd be able to understand clearly how Docker client connect with the Docker host, and then Docker host connect with the Docker registry. As of now we have installed our Docker desktop, but Docker desktop is just for the development purpose. In our actual Windows server or any other server, we won't be able to see Docker desktop on server. Only Docker host will be available, and from the Docker client we would be able to communicate to our Docker host at the server side. Okay, so this is all about Docker architecture and how these component Docker client, Docker host and Docker registries are working all together. And this is not only about that pulling the image, we can create an image from for our application and we can push that image to our Docker registry, and someone else they can pull those images and they can run inside their container as well. So that we will learn in our upcoming videos, where we will create an application and then we will create the Docker file, and from the Docker file we will create the image and we will push that image to the Docker registry, and then we will try to execute inside that container. So friends, if you found this video was helpful to you, please like this video, and if you are new to the channel, please don't go without subscribing this channel and share it to your friends, your colleagues, and which is going to give me a lot of confidence and moral support to make the videos like this for you. So that's all for the day. I'll see you in my next video. Till then, take care and keep learning.